everybody, this is Sindhu from Imagination to Creation, and today I'll be teaching you how to paint a very simple, easy seahorse with another baby seahorse. And we'll be using acrylic paints. The reason we'll be doing seahorses is for Father's Day. Father's Day is a great time to honor and celebrate your fathers and thank them for all they've done for you. And seahorses are known to be notably the best fathers in the animal kingdom. And there are more than 50 species of seahorses, so I encourage you to go and learn a little bit more about seahorses. So this is why we'll be painting seahorses. The materials we'll be needing for this is some paper. I am using watercolor paper, but you can use any thick paper you have, like cardstock paper, canvas paper, or anything like that. And I'm also using some acrylic paints. The colors I'll be using is some sky blue colors, and then some white, and some orange, and a little bit of orange and yellow mixed together. And you might be wondering, how are we going to get this texture here? Well, I'm going to be using some gel textured paint that has real sand in it, but if you don't have that, do not fret. You can use any fake sand that you have. And you'll also be needing some paintbrushes. The paintbrushes I will be using for this is a thick paintbrush and a really skinny, thin one. So you want to get the thinnest paintbrush you can. And that's all you'll be needing for that. And before I start, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been doing painting and all sorts of creative stuff like this ever since I was 3 years old. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm first just going to cut off some masking tape so I can stick it to the back so my paper or your canvas is stuck to it so it doesn't move. I recommend to use this especially if you're using paper, but not necessarily if you're using a canvas. But I decided to try it out on paper today. So I'm just going to stick it on the back right here, and then I'm going to make some more. Like so. And there's like some previous artsy stuff stuck to here, so I'm moving it over this way more so the previous like oil pastel doesn't get onto my paper. Okay, so I usually just do like 4 pieces of tape and I roll them up into circles and then I stick them down. So I just make a circle like this. I stick it down. Okay. So now I can flip it over and stick it down to where I need it. Like this. Okay, so now we can get started. I'm going to be using like a baby, like more of a sky bluish color, and it's light blue. I'm just going to be using a 6 paintbrush, and this is going to just dip it, and I'm just going to dip it into a tad bit of water, and you just want to wipe it off, because for acrylic painting, you don't want a lot of water. And you'll also be wanting like some paper towels, so you can put them in the back, so like if you need to just dry your paintbrush, then you can use the paper towel. And you can also put it around so like your table or whatever hard surface you're using doesn't get ruined. So I usually use like 2 paper towels. But I'm just going to put it around so I can wipe it. off when I need to. You can also tuck it underneath a little bit so it stays, and this is also helpful for if you're trying to not make your surface wet. Like this. Okay, so this is just tucked, this paper towel is just tucked underneath here, but now we can get started. So like I said, we have a tad bit of water, tad bit, and now I'm just gonna get some blue, like that baby blue, sky bluish paint. This is acrylic paint. And I'm just gonna go around all throughout the paper. So I'm just making smooth strokes going back and forth. And then obviously you're gonna keep adding paint. So I'm just going back and forth until I have the entire paper done. Okay, so now I've got all of it across my paper and I have all the blue in. So now we can move on to the next step. So let's get started with the next part. Okay, so now we'll be needing some just white. And I'm gonna be squirting it into my palette. Okay. So now from here, I'm just going to get this little tiny skinny brush. I'm going to dip it in my white. The bristles are really tiny. Just going to dip it in my white. Like so. And then I am just going to make like little curves around it to show that it's a seahorse. So let me show you what I mean. And this is going to be the sand for the seahorse to be around. Okay. So we are just going to make like little, just like some curves. And then curve it in. And it doesn't need to be exactly like circular or like whatever. We just need to think perspective-wise. So we're just making curves like this. So this is the gel texture one, like I was saying. And I have a little bit right here. But I think I'm just gonna use like this afterwards because it needs a color first there. So I'm just going to be using a little bit of white. And I think I'm gonna mix a little tad bit of this blue I have here to make it like blend a little bit easier. So I'm gonna get my white, squirt some that out. And then I'm gonna get the tad bit of that sky blue. I'm just going to mix it all together. So this color isn't quite a white, but it's not quite a light blue either. So I'll show you how it looks. So it looks a little bit white on here, so I'm going to add a tad bit more of the light blue. So now I have a little bit of a more bluish color. Like this. And you may need to go ahead and add some more blue because on my palette, it's like a good color, but on here, it looks like a white. So I'm just mixing in some more. So now it's a bit more blue. And you want to do what you can to not make it look like it's just all a bunch of blob. So you kind of want this line to come through because otherwise if you go in like super gently everywhere, it's just going to look like this entire piece is colored white or whatever color you're using. So I am going to go through with this sort of sandish texture. It's like a gel sand texture sort of thing. I'm gonna go through with it right here. Like that. And I'm gonna go through this top one here too. Also, if you don't have this sort of paint, then you can probably just get some salt and just sprinkle it on top of wet paint. So I'm just gonna make sure it's wet. Put another layer. So it's a slight bit of a different consistency, but it still works just great. And also you can sprinkle in the salt with your paint too, and then put it on your paper or canvas or whatever you're using. So now from here, we can do the seahorse. So for the seahorse, we're gonna draw it first, and then we are going to fill in the rest of the area with our beautiful salt creation or the gel paint creation. And we're gonna fill the rest of the area after we draw the seahorse. So let's get started with the seahorse. So we're first gonna need a pencil, and I'll be drawing it up here, but we'll just be drawing a couple of seahorses. So all I did was just make a curve that comes out like this, kind of like a sideways S shape and a backwards S. And then we made the exact opposite coming down, and this came a little bit further up. So it's a little bit hard to see, but I'll go over it darker. So hopefully you can see it better. Like that. Now from here, we're just going to connect this with the curve like this. And make like a little oval shape like this. And then we can fill in this oval shape. You don't necessarily need to do it with the pencil, but you can do it with whatever you have. Just like this. Okay. So now from here, we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, we are just going to make the eye. So for the eye, we're just going to make a circular shape like this. Come around. And then we can just make a curve like this and fill in this area. And just make a little oval shape and fill in that area there. And like I said, you don't necessarily need to do this with the pencil. You can do it with the paints afterwards too. Like this. Okay. So now, from here, we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, we're just going to connect this top line from right here to this bottom line. So let me show you what I mean. We're gonna curve it underneath, back out, underneath, back out, underneath, back out. And we're just gonna keep doing this until we get right here. Okay. So now, I'm actually gonna bring this out a slight bit more. Just curve it into here. Okay. And you can try erasing on here. I wouldn't necessarily say it erases the best, but you can just do it to your best extent. Okay. So like I was saying, we're just gonna bring down like an S shape of a curve. So it's just gonna come out from right here. Like this. And then curve it in. And then back out. Like this. So let me darken that so you can see it better. Like this. Okay. So now from here, we can just swirl it in. So we're just gonna make a swirly shape like this, and it's just gonna curve in. Like this. and in. Okay, so now I'm actually gonna bring this in a tiny bit more this way, like this. Okay, so now from here, we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, we're gonna curve this side in from right here, like this. Follow the same curve that it's giving us. Curve it in like this. And it's just gonna come in with that sort of shape. Like this. And now from here, we got the basic shape. So now we're gonna repeat the same shape here. So it's just gonna come out like this, and then come and curve back in and just touch into that line. And now in here, we can just add curved lines. Like this. And now we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, we can add some spikes. I don't have a lot of space, so I'm not gonna make mine too big, but just gonna come out with a spike like this. I'm actually gonna put it a little bit higher up. Like this. And then come back out even more. Like this. Or maybe one this way. And then one more right here. And from here, we're just gonna connect them with like U shapes. Like that. So I'll darken this up so you can see it a bit better. Like that. Okay. So now from here, we can just add little lines that come up like this all around it. Like that. Just like to right about here. And now we can connect all the shapes with upside down U's. Oh, actually, real U's. They're just gonna connect with more stretched out U's than upside down. Like this. So now we have that part. Now you can just curve it in and down like that. And there we go. We're all done with the first seahorse. Now we can do an even tinier one right here for the baby seahorse. And then we can finish painting the rest of it with our texture. Okay. So now we can draw another seahorse. So we're still going to start off with that little curve that comes up from here like this. And then we can make another curve that comes and curves underneath like this. And then make that curve here. And that little oval shape here. And what I have to say about the salt being textured is it creates more clumps than like just little like pecks. So the clumps are not that great, but they come off easily, which is good. Because the clumps are just coming off right now. But the reason that they're clumped is because they're mixed with wet stuff. So if you kind of just smush it up, then it turns back into the salt or the texture. Okay, back to the seahorse. So for the next part, we can draw the eye. So we're just gonna make a little circle for the eye, curve this part in, and then make a little curve and fill it in. And now we can connect it with upside down U shapes, like this. I'm actually gonna make this a little bit shorter so I have enough room. Okay, so now I'm just gonna bring this out with a slight curve like this that curves in, back out, and loop-de-doop-de-doos back in, like this. And then we're gonna get this side and do pretty much the same thing. It's gonna come out, back in, come through and make a curve like this. Don't necessarily need as stretched out of a curve like it is there. Okay. So now we have that part sketched in. So now we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, we're gonna bring out another curve that just comes in until here. And then we can make a little lines like this. And now from here, also if you have any thick lines like this, you can also just fix them, but they won't matter too much once you paint them. But now from here, we're going to make the same shape we did here. So curve it out, 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 and back out, and connect it with U shapes. Like this. We can just add little curves like this, lines coming out right here, all around, like right about here. We can connect it with more U shapes. These are more like long stretched out U shapes. like this. Now we can just connect it in with the curve, like that. And now we have both seahorses all sketched in. So now we can move on to painting it. So let's get started with the painting. Okay, so you can use like any bright colors you have, but like ranging from like reds to like, yellows to like a light red. Anything ranging from these colors. So I'm just gonna squirt some of this red into my palette. Sorry, this yellow. So now we can do this little area here, white. So it looks more like an eye rather than being like blue or whatever. So I'm just gonna clean out my paintbrush. And then fill in that area as white. So like I said, I'm using this white here. So I'm just gonna go in around in this area with some white. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And you wanna be very careful while you're doing this. Okay. So now I got that part. So now we can do this little eye black. So I'm just gonna get my black and just use a little bit for the eye. And if you feel like this is too risky for you, then you can also just use a Sharpie, because those work just fine too. I'm just going to make a little dot. I wouldn't really worry about perfection, because sometimes when you go too much for perfection, it ends up looking worse than what it looked before. Okay. Now I got that part all in. So now we can move on to the outlining of the entire color. So let me show you what I've been meaning. So like you can use like a darker color or like an orange. I'm just gonna get the slightest bit of orange. And I'm just gonna outline it with some lines like this. So I'll be needing a tad bit more. So this isn't gonna be exactly orange, it's gonna be mixed with the original color I used. Just a slight bit though. We do not need a lot because it'll just be wasting paint, because it's just for some outlining. And it's better to put less than more, because you could always add more if you put less. But if you put too much, then you can't really put it back in the tube or whatever. Okay. So I'm just gonna go through